What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about Mike Norvell's Florida State team and how we're dealing with a second kind of crisis. I know Florida State fans are a little bit touchy about that word, but I'm going to unpack it. I want to talk about five-star Caleb Williams and how NFL quarterbacks have evaluated him. And I want to talk a little bit about Dabo Swinney and what he had to say about a college football playoff national championship without the Big Ten or the SEC. So let's start with the news. And the news is Warren Thompson took to Twitter to tell everyone that he felt like he was being mistreated and silenced when talking about whether or not the players at Florida State were being taken care of. And he put out an open letter that he posted to his Twitter account. Now, on top of all of that, we got DJ Matthews also tweeting and deleting that he tested positive for COVID-19 and expressed real concern that he didn't feel safe in Tallahassee. Also add here that Mike Norvell's program is one of those that is going through preseason camp, that is expecting to start its season on time in the ACC, along with like Clemson, North Carolina, and the like. So Mike Norvell had a media call at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time today, where he says, among other things, it's just disappointing to see what was said. We've been very open and transparent throughout this process. We've had a voluntary camp. We've had voluntary summer access. We've been very transparent throughout all aspects, including an additional team meeting 2 nights ago in the indoor facility to discuss all issues when it comes to COVID, when it comes to our protocols and procedures. We are following those to the letter of what we have laid out. We're working through all protocols, which do include all positive tests, if that happens, and contact tracing in every area of what we're doing. That's when the players are here in the facilities, as well as the information we gather from what they're doing away from the facility. Disappointed to hear about the messages that were put out there, but we're very transparent throughout this process. And once again, we've had a voluntary policy with all our players and all of our staff throughout this camp, and all mandatory summer access. Now, he and others have spoke out and said, I don't know what Warren Thompson is talking about. Okay. Warren Thompson is wide receiver out of Sefner at Armwood. For those of you that are Oklahoma fans, you'll know that Eric Stryker came out of that same high school. But it's also just not a good look for Mike Norvell at this particular moment in his coaching career, because this is a second time for which he has been called onto the carpet for alleged mistreatment or misdiagnosing, right? His misconduct, the way that he has talked about players, the way that he's talked with players, the communication he said happened that didn't happen. And then you had Marvin Wilson, who was by far the best player at Florida State and a first-round draft pick at defensive tackle, honestly. Say, look, we didn't feel like he had represented the way that he'd been talking to us, and we're not going to practice until we come to some resolutions on this. Now, that was because he said that he talked to every player. He did not talk to every player. He sent out a mass group text, and then, some people that he reached out to, they got back to him, and so forth and so on. So they had that, and they got that squashed. Now we're back to Florida State. And what is Florida State actually going to be doing with this? Because, it sounds as if you have to listen to what Warren Thompson is saying first. You have to hear him out. And you need to get in an independent arbiter to try to figure out what the truth is here. That's not going to make Noles fans happy. I understand that. It's not going to make Mike Norvell happy. But it speaks to what has happened in the last 2 months. We're talking about 2 incidents in 2 months here, or 2 incidents in 3 months. I'm also interested to see how the rest of the players want to go about this, because with this player calling him out and being followed by DJ Matthews, usually where there's smoke, there's fire. And you also need to understand that these players don't really have much to gain by saying that they're being mistreated. It's just, there's not much to do there. Like, anybody who's ever been injured on a football team knows that you kind of disappear, right? Anybody that speaks out against a coach usually loses playing time, those sorts of things. And if you have it out and you take it, quote unquote, to the media, which is Twitter, you invite scorn, right? Chuba Hubbard did this, put Mike Gundy on blast. Now we know who Mike Gundy is, and ends up deleting his Twitter account because of all the hate and vitriol that he later got when he wanted to see an Oklahoma County district attorney fired for his treatment of one case in particular, right? So while these concerns I think are valid and they need to be sussed out, I also think that it's really on Mike Norvell to try to make sure that the communication is streamlined at a time when communication needs to be at an all-time high. Like, we need to be setting new records for who knows what and how and when. I understand how some folks might not feel like that should happen, but that's what it is right now. And that's what it's going to have to be during this season, when everybody's going to be on edge about COVID-19 and everybody is going to try to play football, or so it seems, except the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Which kind of leads me to that discussion about Dabo Swinney and what he thinks of a college football playoff that does not have the Big Ten and the Pac-12 in it. But first, I want to check on the chat, see who's in here. It's just a couple people. That's all right. Hit the like button. Yep, there's Corey. 3 folks in here. I didn't tell anybody that this was going to go on, and I haven't been. But if you've been paying attention, I've been trying to go live the last couple of days at about 1, 2 o'clock. We're still working out the kinks on what that is. And maybe it'll be a regular thing. I just think that it's fun. I think it's a way to communicate with the community here and a way to do a live show. Because, like, I do a live show 5 days a week anyway, right? I just do it on the radio. Now, as we're talking about Dabo Swinney and we're talking about Pac-12 and Big Ten setting out the seasons, we're having this real conversation already about whether or not a playoff is going to happen, and then if a playoff champion is going to be legitimate. Bob Bosley actually was asked about this, and he said they got a call that they're going to take this week about it, and I don't expect them to come to any resolution, but if you have a playoff and you name a national champion without 14 teams in the Big Ten and 12 teams in the Pac-12, is it legitimate? Well, seeing as the Pac-12 and the Big Ten both plan to play a Rose Bowl right now, Jeff Brom and Ryan Day, and both would love the opportunity to play for a national championship, and they nothing to stop them from playing one, they'd be a national champion as well. So you'd have 2 6 months apart. I think you can recognize both, and I think that'd be okay. I think that's fine. We have had more than one national champion more often than not, even in years where there seems to be far and away one team that should be allowed to claim a national championship. And yet we've had other teams that say, actually, we're the national champions, okay? We're the folks that 100% claim the banner. Look as far back as 2017, which is 3 years ago. Central Florida runs the table, goes undefeated with a win against Auburn in the Peach Bowl. And then you get Georgia and Alabama in the national championship game. Alabama gets the W. They are the college football playoff national champs. We got 2 national champions. I see nothing wrong with having 2 national champions in 1 year, provided that you play a spring season at all, which I'm still not certain that we're going to get. But as we continue to talk about it, I would definitely expect to hear that Dabo Swinney wants to win a national championship and claim a national championship, because that's how this would work, man. He actually has a valid point. If you're talking about national champions and you're talking about who's in them, you're talking about Clemson in the playoff era, which is to say that they'd be there anyway. And there's nothing about his football team that would lead you to believe that they would not win the ACC title again and that they would not run the table once again to get to the playoff. And then everybody seemed to think that Clemson isn't any good. Then they go and beat Ohio State. Then they go and beat Notre Dame. Then they hand Alabama their head, and on it goes. So I think that he has a legitimate point. But if Clemson were not to make the college football playoff, and let's say you end up with Oklahoma, Alabama, and Central Florida, and Appalachian State. If Appalachian State wins the national championship, you bet nobody here is going to want to say that, especially if Appalachian State makes the playoff with 1 loss, right? You could have all sorts of chaos, and that's college football. College football is just weird, and it's crazy, and it's stupid, and it is hypocritical, and everything is open to dispute. So I could see a number of teams saying they got a legitimate claim at a national championship. Matter of fact, I could see one in which we have 3. Because let's say you end up with 3 SEC teams and 1 Big 12 team that ran the table in the playoff. And then you have a Central Florida or a Memphis or an SMU or Cincinnati or an Appalachian State or Coastal Carolina that goes undefeated and don't get invited to the playoff. They're going to claim a national championship, and they should, because nobody beat them. And I am a firm believer that if you did not catch an L, nobody can say that you're not the champ, which is the reason why I've always said we need to have a larger playoff. We need to have a 16 to 24 team playoff. 24 teams is what they do in the FCS. Nobody expects San Diego, who always comes out of the Pioneer League, to win a national championship. They're just not that good. But they get into the playoff, and then they get their head handed to them, and that's that. I think that everybody should have the same opportunity to get run-ruled by Bama. If that's Appalachian State going to Tuscaloosa, fine. I want them to have a shot because I believe in meritocracy, and I believe that you are undefeated until somebody beats you. Thought that's what it always was going to be. What's weird is when we have these bowl ban seasons like the 2012 Ohio State team that I need to do a thing on because they go undefeated and they don't get a national championship because of previous transgressions. I'm sure that there are lots of Ohio State fans that want to claim 2012 as a national championship win for them, even as they did it again in 2014. It's just not going to happen. So if you can't actually acknowledge that Ohio State was one of the best teams in the country in 2012, despite not playing in a bowl ban, how are you going to be able to acknowledge or not acknowledge that whoever wins out of the Big Ten and the Pac-12 isn't a national champion? Or that one of these group of 5 teams that runs the table isn't a national champion? If you really want to know who the best is, you put them all in the same bracket and you say, have at it, guys. It's a tournament. But I encounter all sorts of elites who have nothing to say but, hey, they didn't play us and we don't think they're that good, so they shouldn't get a national championship, which is stupid. I hate it. It's ridiculous. All right, let's check the chat right quick. Shout out to my members, man. Corey Karhoff, Kellen Kamer. Man, you guys coming through. I know that I just bounced this on everybody, and I appreciate you showing up. I'm going to try to start scheduling these so everybody knows, but I'm working out the kinks, trying to figure out when is the best time for you guys to actually join me here and do a nice show, right? Because that's fun. I haven't actually reached the number of people that watch these shows to where I have to turn off the chat, which is great. I like the rooms the way that they are, but if they get bigger, we'll deal with that too, because that's a good problem to have. So from there, other topic that I wanted to have a conversation about was Caleb Williams. So Caleb Williams goes to Elite 11 and wins the MVP. And we have lots of discussions about whether or not he should have been named Elite MVP because Trent Dilfer says to the quarterbacks that competed in the competition, 75% of your evaluation is your junior film, which is to say that not a whole hell of a lot of what you did in those 3 days at that camp actually mattered as to who was going to be named Elite 11 MVP. And as guys like Kyle McCord and guys like Brock Vandegrift and Ty Thompson all showed out, Tyler Macon, you were thinking maybe one of those guys could be Elite 11 MVP. No, it was always going to be Caleb Williams based on his junior tape. So we had some dispute about that. And if nothing else, the guys behind Williams closed the gap on him as the number 1 quarterback in the 2021 cycle. Now, about a month later, we get QB Collective, right? And at QB Collective, Caleb Williams was joined by Kyle McCord, Drake May, Garrett Nussmeier, Jake Garcia, and Tyler Buchner. Now, Buchner is still the one guy here that everybody wants to see something done with because Garrett Nussmeier, you know what you're going to get. The same thing with Jake Garcia, who's transferred to Valdosta State because California's not going to have high school football in the fall. And Drake May continues to show out. He's headed to North Carolina, and Kyle McCord, of course, is committed to Ohio State. But at 6'10", 210 pounds, the 5-star out of Gonzaga College in Washington, D.C. was evaluated by former quarterback in the NFL, Sage Rosenfeld. Now, say what you want about Rosenfels, but he actually might be a better evaluator and coach than he is a player, which wouldn't make him any different than most good head coaches. But here was his evaluation. Everyone knows Caleb's story. Such a mature athlete for a young age. Super strong arm. Really strong athlete, great thrower. I wouldn't even say he's a dual threat athlete. He's a thrower, but if he ends up on one of those teams where they run the ball a little more, he'd be great at that too. He has a running back's body in some ways, very smart, and the game and the sport is not going to be too big for him. He added this: he understands the big picture really well. Since I've known him since he was a freshman, he's always had that sort of mentality, and that's why he's here. Every day he works, he knows what he's trying to get done. He's not just doing drills to do drills or trying to impress people. He's trying to get better every single day. I think he's going to be a phenomenal college quarterback. It's not bad, right? Now, there's a lot to unpack there, but most of what you're learning is that Caleb Williams will study, Caleb Williams will work, and those are two things that you're going to need to succeed in college, let alone in the NFL. And he's chosen Oklahoma because Lincoln Riley is a quarterback guru. The last three guys to start for him have been Heisman finalists. Two of those guys have won Heisman trophies. The guy that did not finish second in the Heisman balloting. He is the first quarterbacks coach and coordinator and head coach to put 3 consecutive quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft and the common draft area. That's when the NFL and the AFL merged together to create one draft in 1969, I believe. You know what you're getting in Riley, and obviously if Riley picked a quarterback, you feel real good about that guy as a neutral. You're going, okay, he must be good. That's the other reason why I think Georgia has to feel really good about Brock Vandagriff. Because Vandagriff was Lincoln Riley's first choice. Like Cam Rising was his first choice in 2018, settles on Tanner Mordecai. Rising flips to Texas, ends up at Utah. Now we're talking about the second choice going to Oklahoma and the first choice going to Georgia. Brock Vandagriff is out of Prince Avenue Christian in Bogart, Georgia, and he looks the part, and he slings it well, and he moves well. If Todd Monken is still there, because Todd Monken is iterant as an offensive coordinator, that's the one dig about him. As a coach, he's been at Oklahoma State, Southern Miss, Cleveland, and Georgia just in the last 6 years. But if he is still there at Georgia by the time Brock Vandagriff is able to win the job, I would be excited to watch that scheme, because Todd Monken comes from Cleveland last year, where Nick Chubb was one of the best running backs in all of the NFL. Baker Mayfield is the quarterback. He had Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. to play with, along with David Njoku when he was ready to go and healthy. At Georgia, he arguably has a better offensive line to work with. And if he finds someone to complement George Pickens at wide receiver, good luck. Because the backs that they have there now and the backs that they have coming in are only going to get better. From Zamir White to Kenny McIntosh to Kendall Milton to Dajon Edwards, you can keep going, right? And then add to that James Cook, who can play slot or tailback and is really a Joe Mixon type of player. Now think about what they might be able to bring in here in the next couple of years, and you get real quick to why Georgia is going to probably win a national championship in the next, if not this year, the next 4 years. They're that stacked. Brock Vandagriff comes into that and could either put you over the top or keep you where you want to be, provided that store-brand Cam Newton or JT Daniels are enough to get Georgia where they want to go. Okay, so from there we go to Will Hewlett over at QB Collective, who had this to say about Caleb Williams and his skill set. Put all the physical traits and that stuff aside, he is one of the more impressive throwers I've seen. Just the pure intensity that the ball comes out of his hand, it turns heads. I got to watch former 5-stars DJ Uiagalelei, Bryce Young, and Justin Fields at QB Collective, and just the way it comes out of Caleb's hand is wow. There is an intensity in his movement. I haven't ever seen him do anything half speed. Everything is game speed. Oklahoma is getting a kid that I think is right on par with the top level of quarterbacks we've seen here. He's going to have his own unique traits that separate him from those guys, but he can make any throw, work a full progression, and then be a threat with his lower body. He's as good as any pro-style quarterback out there. If he couldn't run, I think he'd be highly rated. If he couldn't run, I think he'd be highly rated. That tells me a lot, right? That is the number 4 player in the top 247 sports composite, regardless of position, which is saying a lot, right? Because we give quarterbacks the benefit of the doubt in a way that we don't other skill positions. Like, there's an argument to be made last year that Ohio State's Julian Fleming is a better all-around prospect than defensive tackle Brian Brzee, quarterback DJ Uiagalelei, and quarterback Bryce Young. ESPN seemed to think so, especially to a degree, right? So with quarterbacks, you got to take what you're getting on that. But I found that to be interesting, right? And I thought that was a good way to do a stream today. So let me see what else we got in here, because I wasn't going to go for more than half an hour, and we got any questions there. Let me see. If OU wins it will it not count? Negative. It will count. Wasn't asking me, but it'll count. OU win would count. They'd still be playing against the SEC. It's very true. And I think that's what Ohio State, or let's say Oregon, who I would pick to win the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, don't get to say. They don't get to play an SEC team. And in this age, in this modern age of football, nobody would count a national championship that didn't come against the best the SEC had to offer. Certainly not the SEC. And I think that's interesting. And that might be one way that people decide in their own minds who was better at this gig, right? Who was better at pulling off the COVID? If Oklahoma manages to beat the SEC during the COVID, you know that the SEC will be like, you know what? It was a wash season. We didn't really care. It doesn't really matter that much. Also, did you see how many positive tests we had? Forget it. We didn't care, you know? They're not really national champions. Nobody's really national champions. That's what SEC fans would say. USC, Arizona State, Oregon, Utah, they'd all say they didn't play us. Doesn't matter. It's not a national championship. Ohio State certainly wouldn't let anybody get away with saying, hey, you didn't play us. It's like winning a vacant title for some folks, right? If you just vacate the title, you didn't actually have to beat somebody who was the best at it to get the title. You'll still be the champ. But kind of like John Sullivan, when he vacated the title, there was a bunch of people that knocked around the belt that they didn't really think that deserved the belt. And John Sullivan would not come out of retirement until, Jack Johnson. And then Jack Johnson had to show him what's really good. So I think that's interesting, right? In that I still maintain you can have more than one national champion, especially this year. But if it doesn't come against an SEC team, or Lord forbid the SEC does not have a team get into the playoff, who's going to let you have that? I find that to be really interesting as well. All right. With wide receiver depth, are you worried about the quality of wide receivers making it through the season? Certainly am. Certainly am. All right. So for those that need to know Steve's underpinning thought here. At Oklahoma, Jaden Hazelwood blew out his ACL during the COVID. Don't know how you do that, but he did it. Theo Howard blew out his Achilles in January. Okay. Trajan Bridges is out for 5 games due to suspension. So that's 3 wide receivers and 3 of your top wide receivers that you don't have to start the season. You're dependent on Charleston Rambo at the Z, Austin Stogner at the Y, and Theo Weiss at the X. You're probably going to throw Drake Stoops or Marvin Mims in there at that H position. And that's when you want to run 4 wide. Lincoln Riley hasn't actually ran 4 wide in a very long time like that, right? You see a bunch of 2-back sets, but there's no Trey Sermon now. There's only Kennedy Brooks, and then there's Ramondre Stevenson. Oh, yeah, 5-game suspension. Marcus Major, hope he's healthy and ready to go. That would be nice. And then there's TJ Pledger, who, if he's going to pop, now is the time. And Seth McGowan is a true freshman. Might be the strongest pound-for-pound dude in the entire team. Like, he's really that strong. So, yeah, you lose 1 or 2 of those guys, and you're looking at perhaps asking some of those corners and DBs to play wide receiver. So you're going to have to take care of them. But right now, it's about, can you actually put out a team for more than 1 week? Because, I think everybody's going to try to play football. And this is August 13th when we're doing this. September 26th is when the Big 12 season is supposed to start. But September 12th is when Oklahoma's supposed to play. It's going to be an open question as to whether or not that gets done. All right. See what else we got in here. Couldn't care less about the rest of the SEC. Go Gators. I mean, you care about Georgia. All they do is stop a mud hole in you. Man, Jake Fromm never lost to Florida. Who is Jake Fromm? How can you not care about the rest of the SEC? Y'all got styled on by Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm's a 5th round draft pick to Buffalo. What are you talking about? Don't care about the rest of the SEC. Yo, man, get out of the SEC East Division first. And then, there you go. Let's see. Man, nobody knows what's going on with Kamar Wheaton. Like, I did that upload. He's going to do what he's going to do. I think it's still down between Southern Methodist and Oklahoma, but right now nobody knows because he's not really talking. He's not taking any visits. We'll see what happens when he's actually playing football. And I'm sure that I and others are going to go down there and see what he's all about and ask some questions. But right now, you better hope that DeMarco stays on the phone. But it looks like DeMarco's still trying to just buy the Mets. I don't get it. You think Rambo is slept on? Will he be a first rounder? He's no more slept on than Hollywood was slept on going into the 2018 season. And he could be a first rounder. Yeah, I could just easily see that. Let's see. Where else we got? Jake Fromm. Who is Jake Fromm? He's that dude that ran Justin Fields out of town. Corey trying to get buck with y'all because he knows how that went. Now Georgia would try to welcome back Justin Fields with a 5-star quarterback eligible and ready to go. Think about that. That's how good Justin Fields is, man. You know? Let me see. What else we got? Bruh, people hate on Fromm, but dude was a baller. Like, I like Jake Fromm, and then he started posting about how white folks should be the only people to have guns. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let me see. What else we got in here? Justin Fields and Todd Monken equals gold. Not if Kirby Smart is looking at you telling you to run the ball, Todd. No, like, that's what's going to hold Georgia back if anything holds Georgia back. It's going to be quite literally that Kirby Smart told Todd Monken to let off the gas. Because we know that Kirby Smart wants to run the ball and play defense. You can't do that when you're trying to play from behind. That's why they got beat by LSU. They didn't have enough firepower. They were built to run the football. Even as George Pickens had a game. Even as Dominique Blaylock might have been really great. But you got to let Todd Monken cook. And I'm not sure that Kirby Smart is gonna. So while it would be cool to see Justin Fields and Todd Monken at Georgia, especially knowing what they got on that offensive line in that backfield, I'm not sure that Kirby Smart's going to let that happen. Let me see. RJ, are you excited as Oklahoma fan for Spencer Rattler or not really? Anthony, you must be new here. What else we got? If OU plays a season, Ohio State does not. Those teams don't play players, keep their year, and get to sign 25 new guys. We don't know how this is going to work, man. Like, I made that upload before this one. You should go check that one out about what's on the table for some folks. But I can't see how they're going to do this just yet. But you could throw something against the wall at this point, and it would stick because nobody's ruled out anything. See, UGA. I mean, you think he's getting free reign to do something at Georgia, but like Don, cool it. UGA not getting no black QB. They can hang that up. Quentin, what color do you think Jamie is? Do you know who Jamie Newman is? Do you know who Jamie? Some people out here telling on themselves. What is the likelihood of? I guess you're saying OU signing Tumise. I don't put it very high. I think Tumise is going to do what Tumise needs to do. Ohio State might still be that place. Right now, it looks like Alabama, A&M, or Florida, right? Him going to IMG Academy probably gives Florida a bit of an inside track, right? I could see that. I could also see Nick Saban getting into his ear late, and I could see the Aggie Network and what Texas A&M money also might mean getting out of school. Like, you get an Aggie degree, those folks usually take care of themselves. And Tumise might look at himself as another Myles Garrett. And y'all know how it worked out for Myles Garrett at Texas A&M. And I could just as easily see that. Let me see. Would you find it hypocritical that Kevin Warren's son plays at Mississippi State and he plays this season and he canceled the Big Ten football season? Okay. Kevin Warren is the commissioner at the Big Ten. And Kevin Warren ultimately makes the decision with his university presidents about canceling fall football for everybody. even going so far as to say if Nebraska and Ohio State try to go play outside the conference, they will not be welcome back next year. Kevin Warren has a kid that plays at Mississippi State. Mississippi State is in the SEC. The SEC is planning to play football in the fall. Some folks believe that Kevin Warren was comfortable making this decision at the Big Ten with his kid getting to play at Mississippi State. I also find it funny that y'all think that Kevin Warren is making these decisions about what his kid is going to do when his paycheck is very much dependent on him doing what the Big Ten asked him to do in the first place. I don't know how y'all can distinguish the two. What do you think is paying his salary for his kid to go to Mississippi State? His kid's going to Mississippi State because that's where his kid chose to go. Not because Kevin Warren looked up and said, well, it ain't going to affect my kid. That's not what he did. If his kid was in the Big Ten, his kid wouldn't be playing football. But he ain't. He's the commissioner of the Big Ten, not the SEC. And you know what? Who's to say that he makes that decision in the SEC? Because those university presidents want to play football. They don't care about what might happen with the COVID. They think that the COVID is just getting in the way of football, and football is what it is in the South. I think Kevin Warren made the decision that many of his university presidents wanted him to make, and those university presidents are risk averse and they don't want to see anybody die on their watch. But for you to think that Kevin Warren's out here making decisions that just make his kid look good is short-sighted at best. And for those of you that calling Kevin Warren a joke, I mean, all right, the joke is y'all waited until August to make this decision. That's the joke. That's the joke. That's the joke. Let's see. Fields going to the NFL. He should. What else we got? What else? If the NCAA has a spring season, how do you think the draft will work? Like it normally does. The NFL don't care about your spring season. They're going to have their combine in February. They're going to have their draft in April. They're going to expect you to have pro days in March. There's going to be like Ohio State gets gutted. Michigan gets gutted. Everybody that has a player that can go to the next level, kiss him goodbye. Because he's not going to skip playing 1 year of football for your favorite team so that he can skip millions of dollars? What? Nah, man. In the case of Justin Fields, we talk about the difference between $34 million and zero. Number one pick as a quarterback slots at $34 million. You know, with like 24 up front and signing bonus. Nah, man. In the words of Bobby Boucher's daddy, take the money, dopey. Like, that ain't even smart. Like, that's not even a decision. Let's see. What else we got in here? What is the percentage of there being spring football? I'd say 5%. Hell, I don't know, man. Put it at 5% then. RJ, in your opinion, what defenders remaining on OU's board are must-gets for Grinch in full turn the D around? Yo, man, I think that everybody is spoken for that they got a shot at. I mean, Tumise is who you might want to go after, but I'm not sure that you can pitch him on what's going to work here. Like, it's just, yeah. He's got what he's got. The guys that he should have been shooting a shot on have committed to Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, LSU, Florida. I mean, Texas, like Billy Bowman down at Denton Ryan. That should have been a dude. Maybe he's still a dude. Let's see. We going to see you at the games this year? Nah, man, I ain't going to these games this year. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to catch this virus. No chance in hell Nebraska comes home until the Big 12 treats every school equally. You know, I know this dude. He getting the hell up out of here. Because I remember he would come into this chat and talk mad noise to me. And he would go into my comments and call me names. So I'm going to just go ahead and put you in timeout. Like I don't remember y'all using names. Let's see. If the season is played by the ACC, SEC, and Big 12, who are you picking to win it all? Alabama. But I've been picking Alabama. That's just what it is. All right. I was expecting to do about a half an hour. And might do a half an hour to an hour. Trying to stream around 1, 2, 3 o'clock. We'll figure it out. When I get it settled, I'll get it settled. But I got some news that I can't wait to tell y'all about. Some really cool things that have happened to me personally. Things that might affect, what you see and hear from me in the future. And when that stuff is all done and over and I can talk to you about it, be assured that I will. And your boy is having a good time. Your boy is on his way. Cool stuff is on the way. If you like the channel, please subscribe to the channel, like the channel, share the channel with your friends. Tell them what it's all about. All right, that is it for me. Deuces.